There's a plant for every place. This is an evergreen fern called Marginal shield fern. And this is a cool plant called sweet spire. These are all plants that like wet feet. And there's a squirrel. Anybody hungry? Great bark on black pine. Not one of my favorite plants, but they seem very, very happy here. It's almost like dinosaur skin when you look at it. I could almost picture great big dinosaurs walking over me right now. There are some really cool plants at this park. Just to reiterate, we are at Gage Park in Hamilton, and this is a plant that doesn't really have an English common name that I'm aware of. This is called Thureopsis dolbrata, and I have a dwarf one at home that's variegated. Thureopsis dolbrata nana variegata. One of those botanical names you want to keep in your back pocket to shut people up if you need to. But this is a really cool plant. It's very coarse in texture compared to, say, a cedar, and almost rubbery when you look at it. And when you flip it over, it's got these waxy marks on the underside that make it look even more funky. But I've never seen a tree form Thureopsis. So basically this is the way it would grow in the wild, and I've never seen one like this before. That's really, really cool. Over there in the distance is a neat beastie. That very narrow spruce tree in the center of the screen, that is a type of blue spruce. That's a Coster's blue spruce, Picea pungens costeri. And there are very few trees that are that narrow in the landscape. It's got a really, really nifty form to it. So here we are. We've found another witch hazel, and there is a native witch hazel, Hamamelis virginiana, called autumn witch hazel, and this is a spring or vernal witch hazel. But this one has something that we talked about a little bit earlier with the oak trees. This one has a poor abscission layer, so it's holding its leaves deep into the winter. And this one is pretty much done blooming. This is the only plant that I know that unblooms. The flowers, these little curly petals, will on a nice day open up, and on a crummy day close up again, just like little fists. It's amazing how it does that. And this is a really nice specimen. Again, if you want it to choose this, it might be an idea to choose it in the fall so that you get the good fall color, because you know you're going to have good flowers in the springtime. That's just what they do. Plants for poor soil. This is a London Planetree, a massive tree with great winter interest. That tree is about 4 feet across at the base. It's a huge tree. Just ignore the crows. I'm feeling fine, I swear. This tree is another example of a plant which has exfoliating bark. So every year little bits and pieces of the bark slough away, revealing green bark underneath, which then sort of ages to beige and then ages to brown. A really nifty effect in the landscape. There is a native version of this called Sycamore. This is Platanus X acerifolia, and Sycamore is Platanus occidentalis. You can see, stretching back, how big that tree is. And again, the variability in them. These ones have different bark. Each of them has different bark. And these are the seed pods of London Planetree. We saw a round seed pod like this before, but it was a nasty spiky dealy on liquid ambar. This has a seed pod which is made up of little fluffy seeds that can be carried by the wind, and they make this really nifty golf ball-esque sphere. Fascinating texture. So I'm a big fan of winter interest, if you haven't picked up on that already. This is a plant called Catalpa. I think this is Catalpa fargesii. I'm not absolutely certain about that, but it's got these really nifty stringy seed pods that look super, super cool in the wintertime. Not native, as far as I know, but I love the winter interest that it's got. So we are over at this new addition to the park, and there's some nifty plants in here because it is new. There is climbing hydrangea, there's some nifty viburnums, a really cool plant here called whipcord cedar. And it's interesting to have this new section of the park here because this centers on a tribute to the people who designed the park, Howard and Lorrie Dunington Grubb. And they were some of the first landscape architects in Canada, actually. They were from England and they moved to Canada, and they designed Parkwood, which is the fellow that founded half of GM out in Oshawa. They designed this, the High Bridge gardens entering into Hamilton and Burlington, and also the Rainbow Bridge Gardens in Niagara Falls. And the reason that I wanted to pop over here is to show you the elegance of the design. So this is what landscape architects do. This is the design of the park, and the beautiful curves and the way the pathways all interlock and flow together, and the way there's the duck pond and the lake that are now the rainwater lake over there, which is kind of cool. But just to look at the elegance of the entire design. The palm house has been replaced by the new greenhouse, but you can see the way it was all laid out and how it flowed together. You can imagine broad strokes on a large piece of paper laying this all out back in 1927, I think. And the idea that this was designed by Howard and Lorrie Dunington Grubb is pretty nifty. I think it's also noteworthy that maybe I've been sheltered, maybe I've been listening to the wrong people. All of my experience with Dunington Grubb was talking about the guy. He founded Sheridan Nurseries and so on, and it kind of looks like that was a new thing, that interpretation. Even back then, both of their names are on the design. A little bit of me wonders if we weren't perhaps a little more egalitarian back then. Noteworthy. And then you take that and you look at what it is today. We talked about the junipers way back at the beginning. You talk about the vision that's necessary to design a garden like this. You're not picturing in 5 years or 10 years. You're picturing something that's going to evolve over 100 years. This is sort of the main entrance to the garden here, and I love the elegance of this particular entrance, of this design. And even though it's wintertime, we can look at this and we can look at the way the boxwood flows. We can imagine these grasses up tall with their fluffy seed heads on them. We can look at these plants here, which are Weigela, and these probably are a purple leafed variety with bright pink flowers, and there's a large drift of them. Planting things in large drifts gives more solidity, more visual impact to a landscape. And this whole stretch, as we pan up here toward the fountain, we can see all the different foliage colors and textures, even the perennials that have died back for the winter, like hostas and a lovely plant called firetail fleece flower, one of those it's just fun to say plants. And we've got threadleaf false cypress here, another one of those great botanical names to shut people up, Chamaecypris piscifera prolifera orianana. Right beside it, to the left, is Japanese bloodgrass, which would have lovely reddish leaves, so the thread-like and the gold with the red. And then we've got a variegated, really rare plant here called variegated Japanese pieris, which is a beautiful little broadleafed evergreen. That it's tough to grow this. You have to have just the right setting, and then you know, this is all serving to guide your eye up to the fountain. And the fountain, this whole park was donated by a lawyer, Mr. Gage, we will call him, and his daughter donated this fountain in his memory, which is pretty